And we're back for another exciting episode of the Creators Collective. This will be a rather boring week. We have no guest. It's not Christmas yet. And we're all just kind of hungover.
No. We're all hammered right now. It's 10 a.m. and we decided to just start drinking early.
What are you talking about? I just kept it rolling, man.
We should do an evening podcast where we have a few drinks.
Zach's talking about the coffee having too much effect, and Will's talking about being groggy, and I'm like totally zapped from a CrossFit session last night that killed me. So it's a fun one, but we're going to have some fun today. So
it'd be a rather demure podcast.
Yes, nevertheless. I do want to say a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon, particularly Darren Mates and Caleb Harris. Caleb Harris, if you can make this too. And if you become a patron on Patreon, I can butcher your name too. So thank you for that. And if you want to listen to us live, you can catch us on YouTube every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, you can catch us on our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and the list goes on. So let's dive into what we've been working on. Zach, what you got?
It's hard for me to remember like what I did 2 days ago, let alone in an entire week. I think I have like 4 or 5 hammers that I forged, and I need to finish up some of the handles on those. And my buddy Jake from J.R. Palm Knives came over yesterday, and look what I finished.
Ooh.
Nice Damascus.
Yeah.
For those of you not watching, Zach is holding up a Damascus knife closely in front of the camera.
That handle. Pretty cool. So it's a
Is that walnut?
No, that is Cocobolo.
And
see the hidden tangs, a frame construction there. So I still need to finish it a bit, but yeah, I mean, what a learning experience. There's something, it's funny. It's weird. I think it's a good thing. So like I look at this thing and all I see when I look at it is like all the things that I wish I would have done a little bit differently, and all the things that bother me about it. And like, there's just little tiny details that like drive me insane about it. But then if I like set it down and I walk away and I come back 5 minutes later and I say, this is the first knife you forged. This is the first time you've done Damascus. Then I'm like, wow, that's awesome. That's amazing for like my first forged knife and the first time I've actually done like pattern welded steel. So it's really, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this when they do projects where you kind of have to step back and put things in perspective, because it's really easy to
you're your own worst critic, right? Like,
yeah, but I mean, yeah, exactly. And I think like it's important to have aspirations. I think that's crucial. I think that's critical to aspire to be able to do something, or to be to have, what sort of, I guess that's it, aspirations. But when you see that's a big motivator to see somebody who's doing stuff, or to see things that you want to build or that you aspire to be able to create. And I think it's good. I think it's equal parts. It's necessary to have equal parts critique with your own work and satisfaction. Yeah. If you don't have both of those, if you're 100% satisfied with everything you do, you're not going to improve. And if you're 100% critical of what you do, then you're going to lose your motivation and you're going to quit. So I think it's like everything. I think you have to have a balance of satisfaction and critical thinking, or like being critical of your work, I guess. I don't know.
So I think that, yes. So when I first started in photography, somebody that I really looked up to told me that there's always going to be somebody better than you, and to acknowledge that, and to always look for inspiration in others. And that's not to say that you're never going to get to, this, the highest echelon of skill, but being able to recognize great work and aspire to kind of achieve that, and always be inspired, is like you said, keeps you motivated, keeps you going, but also focus on make your make your stuff as good as you can for your skill set. And
yeah.
So
Jim Dockrell asked in the live chat, is there a way to make Damascus today the same as the original way, or is that a lost art? So this is one of the things that is like, this is like the bipartisan political debate of the knife world is like,
Yes.
you have people that are like, oh, I made a Damascus knife or whatever. And then you have like the people in the corner that are like, that's not Damascus. Damascus has been a lost art for 5,000 years. And like, I think it's splitting hairs. Like, I think there is a lot of probably the way they used to do it is different back then, but the nomenclature, like, everybody knows it as Damascus. Your layman knows it as Damascus. Nobody gets on Instagram and searches for pattern welded steel knives. Like, that's not a hashtag. Like,
did you ever watch that Damascus rant by
Green Beetle?
Green Beetle? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love the way he summed it up. Like,
Yep.
Like this guy knows more than me, like most people when it comes to making knives, I can't, you might be able to paraphrase it better than me. I'm not a very eloquent speaker. Come see my talk at Workbench Con.
Yeah. So Green Beetle did a rant specifically for those people that are, oh, that's not Damascus, it's lost art for 5,000 years, where he sums up and uses references from books and where
Historical
people say that historical references and cites them, where he states that Damascus pattern welded steel is just a name, and that it was kind of accepted from like the 18 whatevers, as pattern welded steel can be referred to as Damascus, more specifically in like gun barrels.
It's been appropriated, whether or not it's different or the same. Like, that is the word that people know the thing by. Like, if you want to get,
when you go into any hobby group or anything, is that there are items that the name has changed over time in their meaning. But like, for instance, drone. We think of drone as a 4-propeller octocopter type thing. Whereas up until 4 or 5 years ago, drone was a very specific term to a self-guided, self-flying plane.
Right.
And so it was something that it controlled itself. You weren't controlling. Well, 90% of the drones today aren't self-guided. They may be augmented, but you still control them. Whereas it's no longer referred to as a quadcopter and octocopter. It's a drone. And so that's now the name for it.
and you can have a gay old time flying them as well.
Yeah, it's still the same thing.
It's another word that's changed. Words change, meanings change, things, like, and in the social media world, I mean, if I were if I followed the other camp's mentality of like, well, technically it's not real Damascus, then nobody would ever see my posts, because nobody's going to get on Instagram and type in like, oh, I want to see a pattern welded steel knife. People don't search for that. They search for Damascus. So whether or not I don't care either way, but like, if that's what things are being tagged as, I sure as heck want to tag my stuff like that so that it can be found. So, and I mean, the thing that I think most of the views, you have like your makers, you have the people that build stuff, and they listen to podcasts. They're the ones that are listening to us. I think it's pretty safe to say our listeners make stuff. But the majority of people on social media that watch your videos and find your post don't, I don't think, or they're interested in it, but they're not like actually, I don't want to discredit them and say they're not makers, but like they're not what am I trying to say? Do you guys following me, or am I getting way off here?
I'm with you. I'm tracking.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is that like the majority of fans, followers, views, supporters out there, and for us, probably aren't as heavily vested into making themselves. Like 80% of my YouTube views are from people who don't subscribe to me. So Same, and I'm imagining the same thing as with Instagram. So you kind of have to know your audience a little bit and cater to them. I'm not catering towards. Typically, you're not catering to people that are way better than you at what you do. And I don't mean that to sound like conceited or anything, but I'm willing to bet that most of the people that like watch, you know, me or Will or James, your stuff, they're watching it because there's some value that you're providing. There's some knowledge. They might pick up a few tips and tricks. They're not watching your stuff going like, oh, that's cake. I can do way better than that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying that there aren't people that watch it solely for enjoyment, but I'm willing to bet that like the vast majority of your audience is probably, or our audience, I guess.
That that has changed over time with mine. When I first got started, most of my audience were makers wanting to learn how to. And if I put up an artistic video, it tanked. It did not do well. Now, over the last year to 6 months, that has completely flip-flopped. And now if I put up a video that is solidly how-to with a lot of information, they do not do well. But the artistic videos that go a little smoother, those do really well. And so that's the change in audience as the channel has grown. That's one of the reasons why I'm focusing more on the second channel now, is I'm doing a lot of the how-tos on there so that I can still work with that audience that I like, that are focused on the how-to, the information, that want to build it, but yet still cater to the people who are just randomly watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like there are a lot of people out there that I would say I am probably on par with skill set wise, and not a lot that they do surprises me. Like for instance, Chris Salamone of Four Eyes Furniture, he just put out a video on making an outfeed assembly table, and there's no mind-blowing joinery or anything, but it was an enjoyable video, and I watch it just because I'm like, oh, yeah, like that gives me inspiration to do something similar, like it wasn't, houndstooth dovetails or anything like that, that I'm like, I don't know. I think we're all kind of different. Like where Zach, I feel like you have a very different channel than both of ours, where we're kind of wood centric, and you're more metal centric. So, and there's not, there's, a gajillion woodworking channels, but only a handful of really, metal fabrication, forging, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of your audience is looking for knowledge.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I have a question about that knife though.
No.
Come on.
Okay.
Is that going to be that hidden tang? Is that going to be epoxied in, or are you doing like a threaded pommel? Like a threaded pommel?
It's epoxy, so you can see like the frame. There's nowhere for the thing to go through. And I wanted to do, because I've done some stock removal before, and we forged this one a few weeks ago and did all the like hand sanding and the handle and stuff yesterday. But I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before, and like for some reason hidden tangs always kind of scared me. So I'm like, let's do one. That way I can say I've done one. But it's actually, that's kind of one of the cool things that he showed me, is that like when you do the frame construction, so for people who can't see, it's literally like a sandwich. So you have your tang of the knife, and it's a 3-piece construction. The handle is, so you plane down a piece of wood, so it's the thickness of the tang, and then you hollow out the section where the tang is, so it's like a sleeve that slips over the tang. It's the same width, and then you sandwich your 2 pieces of wood around it. And one of the cool things is that when you put it together, or when you epoxy it, use just a little bit, not a ton. You don't want it to squeeze out into that pocket. But if you coat the tang in like wax, which is what we did, paste wax, some people wrap it in Teflon just to be safe. Then you can glue your handle together, and before it fully cures, you can pull out your tang or pull out your blade. And then you can, when you go to shape your handle, you can do it without it being attached to the knife, which is amazing because you can get in there and it's way easier to manipulate. And there's certain things that shaping your handle with the blade still on it's terrifying because if you accidentally bump your blade on the grinder and there's just certain angles you can't get to. So this is a neat little trick that I learned. I don't know if that answers your question. I can't even remember what your question was.
It does answer my question. I was asking if it was a threaded pommel, like I don't know if you've ever seen the knives. Yeah. You put you thread the tang and then you put like a brass whatever, and that kind of all pulls it all together.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd love to do, at some point do one of each so that I can kind of form an objective opinion about which style I like and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's some things with the Damascus you probably can't see, but there's like some kind of the sheen kind of differs in a few spots. And I think that's either from like contamination when I was etching it. So like oils from my fingers or something, or it could have been mild like decarb from when we forged it. So I don't know. I still have a lot to learn, even with just
call it a hamon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not even, it's not really noticeable unless you look for it. But like I said,
cool.
Picking apart my own work.
Well, Will, what you got going on?
Well, I delivered that dresser last week. The clients flipped over it. They absolutely loved it. The delivery was interesting because the people that were going to, the husband is a little long in the tooth and wears a hearing aid and, wasn't as brawny as a 25-year-old. And so we were trying to carry this dresser upstairs into their living room and then upstairs through a very, very narrow hallway or stairway that we had to take the hand railing off just to fit the thing. And he looked like he was going to drop it a few times and he was wearing a hearing aid. So I was trying to talk to him, but he couldn't hear me. And it was interesting. But the clients really, really loved it. And I'm trying to finish the video on that this week, probably next week though, if I'm being completely honest with myself. So that was really exciting. I was really proud of that build, and a lot of people were following along on Instagram, and so I think that's going to be a popular video. My neighbor friend of mine had a standing dead red oak on his property, and he was having an issue. He couldn't tell which way it wanted to fall. It wasn't near any structures or anything, but he asked me if I would come help him fell it. And I said, yeah, sure. So we were down in this bottomland next to a creek, and I'm kind of looking at it, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure it wants to fall this way. I'm pretty sure the weight of the tree is on this side, so I'll cut a notch on that side, and then I'll do the back cut. Well, I put the notch on it, started cutting the tree, and it's probably 25 inches in diameter, maybe 26. Like it's a decent sized red oak. And then the tree started to lean back the opposite way of the notch that I cut, the felling notch, and it pinched the bar in the trunk. Oh. And I was like, oh man, okay, well, there's no getting that out because I've got 20,000 pounds of tree on top of it. So we'll just take his saw and we'll just finish the cut from the other side and it'll fell the other way. And then I'll get the saw afterwards. Well, so we started cutting that way and it, starts to go timber. We're well clear out of the way. And the base of the trunk where the cut was kicked out off of the stump and landed directly on my steel MS650 90cc chainsaw. Completely bent the bar like in half, bent the handle, that kind of cages the power head of the chainsaw. And I took the bar off, took the chain off, and it actually still starts up. It's leaking a little bit of fuel, so I think but it still starts up, so I need a new bar. But that really hurt my feelings. Made me weep a little. So, and it's funny, I put that photo on Instagram and, everyone, I think everyone thought it was a lot scarier than it was. Like it was a very controlled cut. Like we were never, worried that the tree was going to fall on us. It just started going the other way than we wanted it to. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll cut it the other way. But everybody was very concerned on Instagram. I was more concerned about my saw. I hit 40,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel this week. So that was really exciting.
Congrats.
That was kind of thank you very much. So it's a perfect time for this dresser video because I think it's going to be very popular, and I'm going to keep riding that wave. And because my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, I am diving into macrame. So it's
college.
Remind me what that is again. Is that
tying decorative knots? Yeah.
Okay.
Those hanging planters.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's exactly what I'm doing. Is my wife? It's a dream of my wife's to have the kind of home where we have the plants that overflow the pots and hang, and like
especially
pothos,
with your beams and all that would got lots of to hang stuff from.
Exactly. So we took like a plant class, like how not to kill your plants class, and it's a whole thing. So this year I'm making her macrame hanging pot holders, and I actually turned a little like saucer dish thing that I coated in epoxy. That's gonna anyway. So that's what I'm up to. And I just want to say the Garage Woodworker also commented on Instagram and just commented in the live chat, but was the tree okay? But yeah. So James, what are you working on, man?
A bunch of little Christmas gifty things, just quick and easy projects that you can easily make with a few tools in the shop. So this last week I did a ball and a block. So put a 1-inch marble inside of a block through a 7/8 inch hole. It's a great one for the kids because they're trying to figure out how to get the ball out of the block. I did an infinite candle. So it's like a one-way mirror on all sides of the candle. So when you look into it, you see infinite candles running off in all directions. And my wife and several of the women who watch are like, oh, I've got to make one of those. So I might do another version of that because there's a couple different ways it can be done. I did, I'm working on projects for next week. So I'm making a nutcracker. I'm making a handheld propeller, those old toys that you spin on and fly.
The whirligig thing, right?
Yeah. And let's see what else. Oh, and then I'm working on the scroll saw. That scroll saw that I started like a year ago. I'm finally getting back around to getting that up and running. So a big foot-powered scroll saw. I want to actually, one of the goals with it is I want to build wooden gear clocks, like a wall-hanging, driven wooden geared clock. So
that'd be super cool.
So what do you guys want for Christmas? Like reasonably, like if like what would be a cool?
I have an Amazon list for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I have something I want, I put it on the list, and then if I buy it, then it comes off the list. That way, other people know that I haven't gotten it.
This year was really tough because parents and family have been asking for wish lists, but I don't need anything. So it's been really hard, and the things that I want are too expensive that I think are too expensive to ask for as a gift. Like I would love, Lee Nielsen number 4 bronze bodied plane, but it's, over $300.
Yeah.
Which I think is too much to ask for, unless everybody kind of went in on it together. And that's the one thing I get, which that wouldn't be a bad thing. But
Will's gift registry.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody gets you gift certificates to Lee Nielsen.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. I don't know. Zach, what do you want? What do you want?
I'm kind of in the same boat. So my wife and I are terrible at getting each other gifts because as soon as we get them, we're like, I'm just going to give it to you now. So, like, literally, like, Amazon boxes show up to the house. We're like, here, it's for you. It's like, this is your Christmas present. So like, yeah. I don't know. Like I'm kind of in the same boat. Like it's really weird getting to the point where there's really not a whole lot that you can think of that you need because everything's too expensive.
My wife and I don't give gifts to each other. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. We do small, like, not expensive things, but small, thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like macrame plant hangers.
We like re-upped our coffee stuff. So I got her like a nice new like coffee machine, and she got like a really nice grinder for me. So
like a coffee grinder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like, so it's ridiculous because I have like a $600 coffee grinder, like a commercial one that I have, and I use that for my espresso because I have a really nice espresso machine. But then I do French press in the morning, and she does drip coffee. So we have like 3 different grinds of coffee that we need to do. So it was time to simplify the process. So like our kitchen looks like a commercial coffee bar. It's ridiculous.
Oh, you should. So that reminds me, coffee grinders, coffee, all that. I weeping a little bit, but I'm in a purge mode, like where I'm just like getting rid of anything that I haven't used in the last 2 weeks. But I saw recently an antique coffee grinder, like where it has like the hand crank on top, and then it drops into the bottom, and you pull out the drawer, and then there's your coffee grounds. And it is like on Facebook Marketplace for like $10. And I was like, oh man, like I totally need to pick that up and restore it and make it cool and actually use it. And I was like, no, that's just gonna be a thing that lives on our countertop that I'll never actually use because I don't know.
I think the one that I have is by a company called Red Rooster, and it's like a new. Let me see if I can find it. It's like a new version of an old coffee grinder, old burr grinder, and they're great. Burr grinders are what you want for coffee.
But yeah, so I passed up on it, and I'm kind of regretting it. But that would have been a cool project.
I did a video actually going through things to get a woodworker, and went through the things in my shop that basically I could never have enough of. So even if I have it, you can always get me more. I mean, you think of clamps and marking gauges and mallets, but other things like glue applicating items, tapes, things like that, especially sandpapers that you're always going to be using in the shop. So there's a lot of things that you can get and be like, oh, great, I need more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Rags, glue, all that.
Wow. This thing is expensive now. Holy crap. I bought mine. I bought mine from Stumptown Coffee in Portland, and I think it was like $60. I just put a link in the live chat. $130 now.
That's ridiculous.
For a hand grinder.
I remembered something else I'm working on that I put out of my brain because I didn't want to think about it. But these Walnut Bar Tops, I'm not having a good time with them. So the walnut that I got, the bar tops are 12.5 feet long, which means I need a 25-foot shop with like no tools in it. So I start like just jointing the boards. Like I had to move everything.
The board in place, and you flip your jointer upside down, and you have 2 people to push it along the board.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, it's ridiculous. Like I moved like my whole metalworking side of my shop. I moved like into the other corner of my shop just to fit these boards. I moved my jointer back, and then even some of the boards, when I get to the end, it hits the cabinets on the other side of my shop, and so like the guard stays open, like it just passes over the cutter head. And it's like, and you do this weird dance trying to like move stuff around the shop so you don't hit like everything in your shop.
And run them out of your walkout basement. Put the joiner in the doorway.
That'd be the smart thing to do, James. But but then I wouldn't have any dust collection. But I'll just yeah, that'd be the smart thing to do. Maybe I'll do that. Mm-hmm. You're so damn smart, James.
Or get a hand plane and be at it for a month.
Yeah. No, thank you. All right.
Well, we have a couple questions in the chat. The Garage Woodworker says, why is it better to forge a hole rather than drift it? We talked about this last time, but
you mean rather than
I wanted us to go into it a little bit more. I love Alec's videos, but half the time my ignorance is like, why not just drill a hole rather than hammer a bit through it? What do you think?
I'm going to defer to Zach on that because I have no idea.
So there are obviously pros and cons to each. If you're working with thin material, drilling is much faster. If you're working with thick material, punching a hole can be much faster. But the big difference is actually in the amount of material removed. Punching and drifting a hole removes far less material than drilling a hole. So like
you're just moving the steel, right?
Yes. So like for instance, bottle opener. I have a picture on my Instagram, one I did a few days ago. I don't have it in front of me or I'd show you, but so the way you do that is you start out with you punch a tiny slot. It's like maybe an 1/8 inch wide by a 1/2 inch tall or 3/4 inch, somewhere around there. And then through a series of drifting, you drift that out to like a little over an inch. And so you end up with an inch hole, but you only lost I don't know, what's an 1/8 times? You lost less than an 1/8 of an inch square of material to make. So your hole is essentially I don't feel like doing the math, but it's like somewhere in the vicinity of 8 times bigger than the material that you removed. Whereas, and for instance, so you have 1 inch stock that has a 1 inch hole in it, and you have plenty of material around the outside. You obviously can't drill a 1 inch hole in 1 inch stock, otherwise you're going to cut your bar in half. So, depending on what you're trying to do, you save material. So that's the big reason.
Also, if you want to drill a non-circular hole, like for a hammer handle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever used a piranha?
No, but I've seen them used all the time.
We had one in my last shop, and it was so much fun.
They're awesome.
For those of you who don't know, a piranha is basically a massive hydraulic punch that will slice or punch holes. And the one we had was capable of punching. We had up to a 3-inch die, so it would punch a 3-inch die through 1 inch thick steel.
That's insane.
So you could stick a 1 inch plate in there and punch out a 3-inch hole just with
Piranha is like one of the big brands. Usually it's the Iron Workers, what the actual machine is called. Yeah. But it's like Piranha's like the big manufacturer of them.
But they're fast and efficient. But you lose all that material when you punch it out. Well, you don't lose it because you still have that chunk you can do something with, but it's no longer attached.
It's funny because on hammers, like the hammers that I forge, you get the eye that's the size of a hammer eye, but the material that comes out is, it's like it's not very big at all. I'm trying to think of something comparable size wise. If I in the entire process of like an as forged hammer, I might lose maybe, on a 2-pound hammer, I might lose an ounce total of material between the slug that comes out when I punch it and grinding the faces. The slug is pretty small. It's like the size of your fingernail, maybe, that punches out of the hammer eye.
Cool.
Zach, I have a quick question. Just because I was at a market. A36 cold rolled. Do you happen to know the carbon content in that?
I don't. I know, so with mild steel, and there might be some technical corrections that I'm not privy to, but from what I understand is mild steel, you have 1018, and then you have A36, and they're both very, very, very similar. I think there's probably some alloy in the A36, and it's possibly moderately harder. But it's both, as far as I'm concerned, and most of the people that I know, it's both of them are mild steel, and they're pretty similar.
Okay, so the reason I ask, and this is so I was at this like a farmer's market, city market type thing. A lot of vendors, craft vendors, things like that. And there's a guy that was selling quote unquote carbon steel cookware, and it's all, you know, hand raised and everything in his shop. And so I got to talking to the guy, and I was like, "Oh, you're really cool. What's the what steel do you use for the carbon steel?" He's like, "Oh, it's just A36." And so I kind of had an issue with him calling it carbon steel cookware if it wasn't like higher carbon. I don't know.
Well, I mean, technically, I mean, I think mild steel is carbon steel. It has, you know, 1018 has 0.18% carbon, which sounds ridiculously low, and it is. But considering that, like, high carbon steel, like 1095, that has 0.95% carbon. So, like, the tiniest little variation, and like the hammers I make are 1045, so they're 0.45.
Wasn't that the
anything
difference between steel and iron is that it has carbon?
Correct.
Iron doesn't?
Yeah, like 1018, like any 10 series. So with metal, you have, I mean, there's a lot of alloys and stuff that start with weird things, but like 10, any 10 series is what they call a simple carbon steel. So like 1018 is mild steel. It's the 10 means it's a carbon, simple carbon. So it's just steel or just iron with carbon as 0.18, or they say 18 points of carbon in it. 1045 is carbon steel with, so it's iron with 0.45 or 45 points. And
okay.
So technically it is, you know, carbon steel. I think any steel is carbon steel, and that's what Make Brooklyn just typed. So,
and that's what James said. I guess he was just differentiating between, it's not like a cast iron pan.
No,
it's a carbon steel.
And cast iron is like super high carbon. It's so much carbon that it's brittle.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think due to time, let's get on to the next set. We're actually going to be doing a creators photo challenge, which will be due probably after the first of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think things are going to slow down for the holidays here.
Yeah. But this should be a good one for this time of year, and we're going to focus on Bokeh, or how do you say it? Because I've heard it pronounced like 7 different ways.
Yeah, it's been pronounced 7 different ways, and people will tell you you're pronouncing it wrong if you pronounce it any of those 7 different ways.
It's like Damascus.
Yeah, it's Damascus. So Bokeh. So that's how you.
Well, why don't you tell us what we're looking for then?
Okay, so Bokeh is the pretty out of focus bits in an image. So when you talk about specifically SLRs, you know, and lenses with apertures that you can change. So when they talk about the blade, how many blades a lens has, the only reason that how many blades a lens has really affects an image is in that bokeh, the out of focus, the soft bits of the image. So more aperture blades will give you a rounder bokeh, and less aperture blades will give you a more, you know, pentagonal bokeh. But so we are looking for beautiful images with bokeh. So something that might work is something with shallow depth of focus, something in the foreground that's, you know, your subject matter, and then beautiful out of focus bits in the back. So this works really, really well with things like Christmas lights and other things like that. James, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, like with modern phones, you don't necessarily need a DSLR with a shallow depth of field. If you go in most of the newer phones made in the last year or two, you can get a portrait setting that does a really decent job. It's not perfect, and you'll get a far better image with a DSLR or a shallow lens.
Or you could like breathe on your lens and just wipe off the spot that you want clear.
Photo
I want
tips.
to see somebody do that. Yeah.
You know, we actually used to smear like Vaseline on our lenses for that same exact effect.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So yeah, you can play around with it on your phone, and you might find a setting called portrait mode where you'll take the picture and then it digitally edits the background, or it tries to figure out what's background and what's real. And I've been happy with the one I have. It's fairly decent, but still not as good as when I pull out my Panasonic. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Well, we do have a joke of the week.
We have two.
We have two of them. So I'll do the first one, and Will, I think you put in the second one.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure.
No,
that's yours. That's yours.
Yeah,
Hey, I don't know that one. I was talking with my daughter the other day, and I said, I really don't trust those trees. And she looked at me and said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, they just seem a little shady."
That was pretty good.
What you got, Will?
This one is from Jeff Gruff in the live chat.
He's like I think if we had a trophy to hand out for like most bad jokes contributed, get it. We should make one.
Oh yeah, he's unchallenged as
the dad master.
He's the king.
You have to make a really bad trophy.
Yeah, we get Paul Jackman to make the leg lamp again. All right. I wanted to make sure I remembered everything about my time as a lumberjack, so I kept a log.
Nice. I like that one.
That was a good one.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I can't believe this joke of the week thing is still going after. God, how long have you been doing this podcast for?
We did this all the way back in the
early days.
Yeah, in the creator, what did it used to be called?
Crafted podcast? Yeah, that one.
Cool. Yeah. Well, what are we watching, reading? What's inspiring us?
We should, before I had this idea. We should ask our live chatters, who should we have on the show? I mean, like realistically, like alive people, living beings, not in all history, but who would you guys like to have? Who would you guys like us to have as a guest on the show?
Question, Zach? Since you have a pretty good relationship with him, is there any chance we can get Jimmy?
I'm sure we could.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Alex Steele. All right. Yeah. I mean, maybe. Roy Underhill. Wow, you guys are really pulling out the big guns. All right. I'll just text Roy right now. That's a joke. I don't have Roy's number. All right. What are we watching? Reading? Is that what we're on?
Yeah. What you got?
James, how about you?
Oh, fine. Throw it back at me. I have to go with Frank Howarth. Name butcher. Frank Howarth. If you haven't seen his channel, he has the biggest, most massive machines ever made for woodworking. He has, dedicated radial arm saws. He has one that's dedicated to dado blades, and a table saw island with 3 table saws in it, and a bandsaw that is basically a milling saw set vertically.
He's got the big Oliver 36. Right?
Make Brooklyn said that if you rub a wooden plane 3 times, Roy just appears in your shop. That's so good.
I love it.
But he did a video on making mallets, and he wanted to make. He has these finger jointed mallets that he does. He was making a new one, but he was making them on his CNC, and I love the way he does things, because it is so opposite of most channels, in that a lot of channels like to show the details of every step and how it was functioned, and coming up with interesting ways of doing it. Whereas Frank, you'll be watching along, and he pulls out this jig that is incredibly intricate and designed for this one specific use, and just skips over it. And I love that. It's just, it focuses on the work as opposed to the mechanics behind it. It's a slightly different way of doing it. But in this one video, he has like 4 or 5 odd jigs made specifically for this one task that suddenly appear out of nowhere, and it fits perfectly with him and his massive shop tools. Just really cool channel. So if you haven't seen Frank, you've got to, but I think most of you follow him.
Yeah. Somebody said the Wood Whisperer. We've actually had him on our show before. So get with the program, buddy.
I'm the show.
Yeah.
Well, what you got, Zach?
Let me see here. So I got a book recently. Where's the link? That's it. A book.
Go read a book.
I got a book.
I got a book. I'm reading a book. Okay, so this is, I don't know why, like forging, blacksmithing books are all really expensive. I mean, here's a link. This one's $40. I guess it's not terribly expensive, but compared to, a lot of stuff they seem to be
What's the name
more
of it?
expensive. It's called Secrets of the Forge: Beginning and Intermediate Projects for Blacksmiths. I have a lot of like forging books and a lot of how-to books. This is a project book. So it's not, it's not like here's how to use a hammer, here's how to it's not like a what you need to get started book. It's just it's like simple beginner, intermediate projects. And the thing that I like about it is almost like most of the forging books that I have and that I've read, like you can tell they were made like 30 years ago, and all the pictures are like grainy black and white pictures that are almost worthless, and they're, they're just not very visually interesting or appealing. They're like, they almost feel like a textbook. So I like this one. There's some really neat projects in there. So I've been kind of going through and picking out some of the ones that I feel like would be a challenge and having at it. So he has a intermediate and advanced book that I plan on picking up here as soon as I'm done working through this one. So if anybody's looking for a book, and even some of the projects that I'm not going to do in there, like just reading through them, like I'm learning things and, just kind of giving me ideas. So it's just a good, solid, one of the better like smithing books that I've come across. The pictures are nice. So
Sweet.
yeah, that.
What you got, Will?
So I got to go with Kimball Cody, who is very chainsaw centric channel. And with the unfortunate event that happened with my chainsaw, I was looking into other chainsaws, and he actually reviews the Farmer Tech G660, which is a clone of the Steel MS660. And he actually reviews it really, really well. And it's like if you buy a Steel MS660, it's like $1,300. If you buy the Farmer Tech, it's like $300. So anyway, that's what I've been watching. And he actually, I think we might collaborate on something one day, but,
cool.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about anything chainsaws, Kimball Cody's the guy. Chainsaws and boots. I don't know. I think maybe he's a logger.
Well, since you're talking, what's your favorite tool of the week?
My favorite tool. So I just reorganized my office, and I reclaimed this rack that was in my office closet, and I put it down in the shop. And Total Boat is one of my sponsors, so they send me just a gross amount of product, like things I don't even know if I'll ever use, but like I've just got boxes and boxes of Total Boat stuff everywhere. But I really, really, really love their 2-to-1 epoxy and their penetrating epoxy. And I just found out that I have a coupon code for anybody that wants to save 20% at totalboat.com. You can use WM Walker at checkout. And that's good for anything on totalboat.com and JamestownDistributors.com, which sells Festool stuff, fine stuff, tight bond products, 3M stuff. So 20% at Jamestown Distributors, and that usually has free shipping too. So that's my stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What about you, Zach?
Magnets.
Nice. Okay.
Cool. We featured that before. Let's do it again.
Yeah. No, I mean, not any particular kind. I just used yesterday. I was in the shop and I used like a lot of different types of magnets to do certain things. They're really handy. For instance, I got like one of the magnetic knife holder things, and I just stuck it to my forging press to hold all of my tools in place, like the ones that I use frequently there, so I don't have to walk all the way across the shop to get them. They're just hand. And it's obvious, but it's not obvious until you think about it. So that's been handy. Also for some of the stuff I was doing with knives yesterday with that surface plate, the granite surface plate. You can just stick a magnet on the back of it so that you actually have enough, something to grab onto when you're flattening it. Same as on the belt grinder. Something else I did is, those metal protractors, the adjustable ones.
Uh-huh.
So I magneted, I stuck it to the side of my grinder on the slack portion and raised up the little angle thing to what I wanted and just used it. I didn't actually rest the knife against it, but I used it as like a visual guide to keep my angle kind of consistent. So there's just keep magnets in the back of your mind and you'll use them for a lot of stuff. So the neodymium ones are ridiculously strong. Yeah. So get some of those and be careful with them because they will pinch your skin off.
I have a 600-pound neodymium magnet.
It's insane.
That I'm terrified of the thing, but it's so much fun to play with.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found, because I have some really strong ones too, is, one of the issues with the neodymium magnets when they get to be large is putting them on and getting them off.
Yes.
Like seriously, getting them, like if it's a big flat surface, you can't get them off. So one of the things that I'll do if I want to be able to remove it is I have like a thick scraper knife. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like a
putty knife?
Yeah, but like it's kind of a thick one. And so I'll stick the magnet on there so that when I'm putting it on things, I can kind of slowly tilt it down into it. And also if I need to remove it, I have a handle sticking out so I can pop it off that way. So that makes it easier to put the magnets on and off. So, and if you need to reduce the strength, you can like sandwich something between the magnet and the putty knife or whatever the heck you want to call it.
Good tip. I use small rare earth magnets or neodymium magnets all over my lathe. So when you're turning, like I've got my wormwood screw and the key for the chuck and some other stuff, and I've got it all just like stuck to my lathe. So whenever I need something, it's right there. So another good magnet tip.
Yeah. The only problem with magnet in a metal shop is that like they collect every tiny little, I guess that could be a plus too, because you should hang one right beneath your nose when you're grinding. I don't know. They should do that. Would be a good idea. Somebody should make a respirator that has like a magnet somewhere.
But wouldn't that also attract things to your face?
True, but it would detract them from getting from your lungs, I guess. I don't know.
Why not just put a magnet on the opposite side of what you're grinding?
Because I don't think it's strong enough. I mean, it would have to be really strong.
I don't know. James, what's your product?
One on my mouth when I grind.
Well, I have to go with the auger file. This is a file designed for sharpening auger bits, and it is safe on one side and rough on the face, and then on the other end, it's safe on the face and rough on the sides. So you can sharpen the auger without hitting the nickers or the shaft of the auger. So a really useful tool. Once you have one and you've sharpened a few augers, it is amazing how often you pull it out just to clean up a bit before hitting it. It just takes a few seconds, and they cut so much faster, so much easier, and a fantastic thing to have on hand. So, yeah, definitely, if you use auger bits, it's the thing to have. Cool. Well, I think that about does it. Do we have anything else we need to talk about? I don't think we do. So thank you for wasting another hour with us. We have been having a lot of fun here. And if you'd like to find out more, you can find us on patreon.com, as well as join us on any of the regular podcasting sites. What is it? iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Sketcher. What are the other ones? There's a bunch of them. We're on them all. So we'll see you every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And until next week, have a wonderful day.
See you guys.
See you later.